All right, I think we're just about ready to get started. Well, welcome everyone, and we are back for another bi-weekly community call. It's been a little while since I've been around, but glad to be back, and this time joined by guests from iYield. iYield is a portfolio style tracker that has a wide range of uh, applications across DeFi, including rocket pool mini pools, which is relatively uncommon in the portfolio industry. So I will let our guests introduce themselves. Give it up for iYield.
Hi guys, great to be here. My name's James. I'm the founder of iYield. Um, the short version of iYield and its benefit for you guys is that iYield's a bit like a crypto portfolio tracker like DBank, but whereas services like those tend to just give you the value of your assets, iYield also supports debts, incomes, and expenses. So we can give you your full kind of financial picture, let you know your real net worth, and your yields, including your expenses. It's a much more kind of flexible and robust tool than those simple portfolio trackers. Off the bat, I'll just say that it's a free service, and you can have a look around with just a guest account. And even if you want to make your own account, it's completely anonymous. So there's essentially kind of no cost and no downside, other than I guess a little bit of time it would take to look around. I'll just
Thank
talk about this. I'll just talk about the rocket pool specific stuff features. Um, in short, you can put in your Ethereum address or link your wallet if that's what your Web3 wallet if that's what you run your rocket pool mini pools through, or you can put in your rocket pool node public identifier in the search bar, and you will find your rocket pool node or nodes. You can add them to your iYield account, and we will keep track of their performance. Basically, we'll keep track of their value in whatever is your preferred currency, like your local currency from whatever country you're in, or if your preferred currency, if you think of everything back to Bitcoin, you could put your preferred currency as Bitcoin, and we'll give you the node's value in Bitcoin, and also, of course, the income, the yield or the APY.
I have a
And
quick question about that.
yeah, great.
So when users go and import their or attach their seed, or not their seed, but their wallet to the tracker, how will they actually see the income stream? Will it just be flat APR, or will you actually be able to see the RPL inflation percent and then the ETH rewards separately?
Yeah, we show it as a total, and then within the total you can break down the total to rewards that you received in ETH and rewards that you received in RPL. Future, more granular details could be added if that's if we get those kind of requests from the community.
So I'm curious, is smoothing pool just factored into the ETH? Yeah,
Yeah,
so yeah, is the smoothing pool income factor as part of just the ETH income?
yeah.
Yeah, I
Whether
can.
you're in the smoothing pool or not in the smoothing pool, um, that is in the ETH income. I'm joined by our principal engineer Robbie. He might want to add clarity on that. Go ahead, Robbie.
Yes, so we definitely do detect whether the mini pool is part of the smoothing pool, and if so, we calculate the execution income for the validators differently to if it wasn't in the smoothing pool. That's right.
But either way, we get the MEV. We're aware of the MEV that's coming in there. And just last detail on it, if you have expenses related to your rocket pool validating, such as the hosting fees you pay, if that's to all nodes or or whatever, you can add those as an expense. You kind of add it manually. You just put the details of the expense into iYield, and then we'll take that into account into what your APY is. And
That's very cool. So
yeah,
something like an all nodes user who has a fixed rate per mini pool, they'll be able to very easily factor exactly what their yield is, right?
Yep, and if for your financial management you need to withdraw rewards every month, and on average that's a $20 worth of withdrawal fees, you could put a $20 withdrawal fee expense onto the asset, and that hosting fee expense onto the asset to get the really accurate details. And we also have like multiple spaces, so you could set up your my real finance space with all your real information, and then you could kind of make a duplicate of that space and do some experimentation of what would happen if, heaven forbid, I changed half of my rocket pool validators to Stata validators, or what if I changed from hosting on all nodes to home validating, and I changed the expenses attached to the validator. So iYield's very kind of like hackable and flexible. You can put everything. You can put all your real finances in, and you could make like experimental spaces to try out different things as well.
Well, with the upcoming, hopefully, launch of the Constellation part of NodeSet, the Node Operators Association, we might see some subset of Rocket Pool node operators want to add more detailed income streams based on that upgrade being live. So yeah, that's definitely something that I think node operators will be paying attention to. Can you tell me also a little bit about the rETH side of things? Uh, I see a pretty wide coverage on what vaults you have available, including Beefy, Balancer, so on and so forth. How do you guys decide what to include and what to exclude?
Because we want to support as much as possible, and we're adding things based on user feedback, or based on how big a protocol is, how popular it is in general. So it's kind of how popular it is in general, how popular it is amongst our users in particular. And from the Rocket Pool side, for most of the time that iYield has existed and as was being developed, me and other team members, we were Rocket Pool validators ourselves. So that's kind of why we ended up with so much support for Rocket Pool and related protocols. Yeah, for the RPL, we track that as a liquid staking token. So again, even if you don't have any validators, you can add your RPL as a, well, either, sorry, I'm talking about the liquid staking token can be added, and
rETH,
we'll
you
get
mean, I
the
think.
rETH,
rETH.
pardon me, and we'll get the income, for your rETH liquid staking token. And similarly, if you deploy that into DeFi, we support most of places where that could be deployed, like EigenLayer or Pendle, and we'll get all the income and balance for those as well. And with the governance token RPL, it's we simply, if you just have a balance of that, that will be added to your space, just tracking its value. And if you deploy that to DeFi, it just depends if we support DeFi protocol, and we want to support all of them. We're adding more. We're adding more every week.
I think the most prominent RPL use case in DeFi is Aave, which I'm imagining you guys support. So it'll be pretty cool to see the income stream generated there. And I'm assuming, or actually, just a question. So imagine I had a position existing for many years. It would be able to show the history of that position as well, correct?
We don't have much historic reporting as yet. It's
Oh,
something
okay.
it's something we want to add. It's something we can add. We have the data essentially. So yeah, we look forward to adding more more historic tracking, depending on kind of user demand. But since you've
That
just we'll take this as a request, and we'll bump the priority.
Deeply appreciated. Yeah, I've always wondered because I've had my RPL in Aave for a very long time now, and earning somewhere between 2 and 5, 6%. Sometimes temporarily like 90% during short squeezes. And I've always wondered actually how much that position has moved. Likewise with some rETH that I've been holding for quite some time. And I know that people listening to this, if they're Rocket Pool OGs, are probably wondering how much their mini pools have made over the course of their history. So that would be pretty cool, and I will look forward to one day seeing that.
Yeah, good
Are there
stuff. Right,
any other?
right now the look back is 30 days.
Got it.
And a good thing is that it's standardized between different protocols, or between all your investments. So sometimes you might go to like a rocket pool dashboard and they're using a 30-day look back, and then you go to a Stater dashboard and that's using a 7-day look back, or then you go to a
Right.
dashboard for your LST and that's using a 3-month look back, or anything like that, and then you can't compare your performance like
Yep.
that. The good thing about putting them all into iYield, you can really compare them side by side with uniformed metric kind of ways of getting those metrics, which makes it useful for comparing different investments.
Right. Rocket Pool had a similar decision that it had to make, which was what is the quote unquote correct node operator APY, rETH APR to display to users. And it's, an impossible question. There's not really a right answer. The best you can do is be consistent. Uh, and when you have a tracker, that's even better to be able to just compare side by side.
Yeah. So
Another question I have. Sure.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask, is there any future plans to include tools around taxes, or is that somewhat out of scope?
Yeah, it's tricky just because taxes are so location specific. Obviously,
Right, right.
a tax tool for US users would be useless for our users in Australia, and vice versa. So iYield can help you, can certainly help you with your taxes. I wouldn't say it's like a concierge. We don't have many tax specific features. We could just help you calculate your taxes by again showing your income in a consistent way and things like that.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And with the tools available on iYield, such as tracking individual expenses, it seems like a very ideal place to do that.
Yeah, I mean, one
So
of
I
our
see
big
you have.
goals is to essentially, as much as possible, replace your spreadsheets, replace your crypto DeFi spreadsheets. That was essentially how iYield was born. Is that I had multiple DeFi positions and multiple staking, uh, and I was keeping track of it on spreadsheets like most of us do, and it was hard to kind of manually update all the values in the spreadsheet, to bring in the prices, to update the different balances. It was kind of clunky, so we realized a better way to do this would be to make a web app that has all the features of the spreadsheet and more.
Yeah, I know there's tons of people in the Rocket Pool Discord that still use spreadsheets, and probably will forever because they are very spreadsheets people. But then there are also people like me who love portfolio trackers, especially the more customizations I can get behind them. So if I happen to be someone who has a somewhat exotic DeFi position that I notice is not available on iYield, what could I do to get that incorporated?
Yeah, well, please let us know that you would like it to be supported, and we'll try to add it. In the meantime, you can add anything just as a manual investment. You can essentially just, a bit. It goes back to being a bit more like a spreadsheet. You can just press, add new asset manually, and then you'll have a little form. What do you want to call the asset? How much? What's the currency of the asset? How many units do you have? And then and then you can add an income, which would be the yield, and link the income to the asset. So you can set anything up manually, and that way you won't have that automatic kind of updating. But that's just kind of hopefully just a temporary thing you do until that asset is supported.
Great, I'm glad that's available there as an option. I have a question about the website. Is there any data that the website collects from the user upon using the website?
It's what we need. What we need to show. It's the only thing that could possibly be considered like sensitive, or your kind of financial data is things that you've chosen to put on there. So like if obviously you put into iYield your Ethereum address so that we can add your rocket pool validators. Obviously, we store your Ethereum address because we need that to to display your rocket pool validators, and that's what you've chosen to give us. We're not going and harvesting anything kind of outside of what you give us and what we need just just so that the app works for you. And of course, yeah, we have the terms of service and the details there on the website if anyone's interested.
Yeah, great. I just thought I figured I'd ask because Rocket Pool folks tend to be very risk centric. Can never
Yeah.
trust anything. Got to verify.
Oh yeah,
Um,
a good thing is that we're an anonymous service. We never will ask for your ID or want to know your ID. You can sign up with your Web3 wallet or with your email address or with like your Google account. You can sign up with your Discord account, and you know we're never going to get your name or any your address or anything like that.
Amazing, amazing. Are there any upcoming features or upgrades you guys are planning for iYield that you might want to talk about?
Yeah, if it's not added already, in the next week, we're going to add Aave as you mentioned, so that will support
Oh,
the
okay,
those RPL Aave pools.
very
We've got
cool,
a lot.
very cool.
Yeah, we've got a lot in the works. In general, we're developing a FIRE calculator, as in financially independent, retire early.
Very
So
nice.
yeah, you can already use iYield to kind of figure that out, but you have to do a couple of calculations yourself or use a spreadsheet. So the FIRE calculator will let you say how much money do you think you need to retire, and then we'll tell you with your current finances at what age you would be able to retire. Or
Hmm.
you can say you want to retire in 10 years, how much income will I need to be able to retire with this much, and you know all those variations. So it'll be kind of crypto's first kind of FIRE calculator.
You
We'll
know,
add in
the overlap between the fire community and crypto is pretty massive, so I think that'll be a hit. But yeah, as you were saying.
yeah, no, good. We're adding kind of an alert system, so you can be alerted when you're at when an address reaches a certain balance, or you can be alerted on upon certain systems, just so that again, iYield's kind of more of a one-stop shop. You don't have to have a separate alerting system. We're always just improving the performance and stability of the service. Robbie could chime in with any other upcoming features that are going to be deployed soon. If you're on mute, Robbie. Yep.
Yep. Yeah, so other features that we're working on include email alerts that give like a summary of the performance of your application of your investments. Let me think what else.
So, just
Yeah,
a quick question on that. Is that something that could be customized? Like, for example, I only want an update every 10 days or X number of days, or is that sort of a standard sort of set of affairs?
yeah, we're still pinning down the exact specifications of that feature, but yeah, customization like that is something that we can do, as well as deciding how many of your spaces in iYield you want alerts about. You might only want to get email alerts about your real finances, not your experimental spaces.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, things like that. We're working on a lot of performance improvements to the application to make search faster and stuff like that. Yes, that's what I can think of off the top of my head.
Very cool. Very cool. And so I have just one final general question, and where can our listeners learn more about iYield and follow you guys?
Great. So just go to iyield.com, and from iyield.com, if you want to scroll down until you see the little rocket pool logo, click on that, and that will take you to the knowledge base article, which details exactly how to add a rocket pool node and all the ways we support rocket pool nodes, as well as the LST and the governance token. And yeah, from there, have a look around the website, and then click sign up whenever you're ready. It's free. After you click sign up, you can choose to have a look around with a guest account. If you prefer not to even open your own account, then you can even you know, try adding your Ethereum address into the guest account, and then you can convert the guest account to a real account. So it's all there for you.
Great. That's awesome. I hope our listeners go check it out. Portfolio tracking for Rocket Pool is pretty difficult, and having a customizable tool like this might make it a lot easier. So thank you
Yeah.
again to our guests for being here, James from iYield, and as well as your dev. So
Thanks very much. Yeah, I'd like to say we're going beyond portfolio tracking to almost like financial planning for crypto
right,
natives. Yeah,
especially with that Fire integrate or that Fire system, that'll be
yeah,
very cool.
yeah. And supporting debts as well as assets lets us give you your real net worth and your budget your budget savings rate or your cash flow over time. Great, thanks for having us. It's been really good.
Amazing.
And thanks
Thank
for all
you.
your work on Rocket Pool and DeFi and non-government money.
Yeah, and thank you guys for integrating Rocket Pool. It's great to see the ecosystem adopt us.
Yeah,
Feel
no,
free to stick around. We are going to shift into the second phase of our call, where we talk with Langers, the general manager for Rocket Pool.
hey Jasper,
Hey, Darren, how are you doing? Long time no
I'm
chat.
good. Yeah, yeah. How's it going?
I have been busy away, resuming full-time medical school.
Nice.
Uh, the the clock has spun back round. The pendulum has made its path over the median,
So
but it's been good.
crypto is not distracting for you. You gotta knuckle down now. Get those papers written.
Yeah. The tweet flow has unfortunately taken a bit of a hit, but uh,
Just think
I
of
will
the
still be around
followers.
for the important things.
What about the
I'm glad
followers?
I don't have. I'm glad no one's trading my Twitter account on any social games. Otherwise, they would be tanking right now. Uh, Well, but I am back. I'm going to still be doing these calls when I do have a moment. And, I've been doing quite well in school lately, so I have a moment. We are here to discuss a variety of topics. It has been, while I have been away, the Rocket Pool team and community have most certainly been hard at work. So, a lot to cover. Uh, and we'll start with the most obvious, and that is the four RPIPs that have hit governance after many months of work going into them. One comment made by Nashua and Trading was that these ideas have been percolating and developing in the community for over 2 years, and in many ways, I have to agree. One could also consider the starting point wax call to action in November-ish of last year, or perhaps the solidification of ideas during uh, ETH Denver, where we had our entire day dedicated to research on the rocket pool and tackling hard problems. Regardless, we now stand with 4 votes live to radically change how rocket pool's tokenomics work. Darren, how do you feel before we get into the actual meat and substance of these RPIPs, just about the process and like how we have gotten here?
Yeah, it's definitely been a journey, and I think everyone's kind of it's like the thing is no one's really done this before, or at least very few people have done this. So it's been a lot of discovering not just what we want to. When I say we, I mean the royal we, everybody in Rocket Pool,
Right,
not
right,
just
right.
not just the core team. So like the what we want to achieve out of these where we want to go with Rocket Pool, where and not only that, but how we want to get there as well, and what the processes should be, and all of this sort of thing. It's definitely been a journey to discover all of that. But to be honest, I mean, it's kind of one of the reasons why I got into crypto in the first place. Is this kind of wisdom of the crowds, and the you know, everyone pushing together, and working on this thing together, as a whole community. I think is is fantastic. And yeah, no, the big kind of that shout out to everyone who's worked incredibly hard, getting things this far. You know, everyone who's kind of like contributed, because like back in you had, yeah, you said WAC raised the kind of the call to arms essentially, but then we had like the innovation, the incubator stuff that we went through. We had some fantastic ideas, which all of those ideas kind of came together, and then um, uh, Kane and I were on the committee that evaluated some of those ideas, and then those ideas were kind of like smashed together and bounced around, and more ideas came out of those, and then it's ended up where we are right now, with an awful lot of drafting and discussion and alternatives and all of that sort of thing in between. So no, I think it's been fantastic. It's not. I wouldn't say it's not the most efficient process, you'd say, but it's. I think it's the. I think it's an extremely good and extremely good and effective process. I think we've ended up in a much better place than we would do otherwise.
I think it deeply mirrors another very, very inefficient governance process, and that's the EIP process, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Ethereum itself does the EIP and then does the work after, whereas a lot of other protocols sort of do the upgrade and then sort of tell you about it. Here, we're actually like doing the community built spec, and it's evolving in real time, which is a rough consensus process, which I think has yielded the best possible product. Another meta level question. I'm curious, since for a long period of history, Rocket Pool has, sort of lived by this idea of the RPL bond. Um, even the early ICO mentioned loosely that idea of tying RPL to TVL. Uh, it was only later codified by FireEyes. But my question to you is, when did the core team sort of start to understand that, maybe a tokenomics change is the right way forward? I'm curious, was there a moment where the team sort of came to that idea, as well as seeing the community response to things? I'm curious, like, just how that whole process worked. Of course, in the end, it was a group decision between the team and the community, but I'm just wondering when the team also came over to the other side, so to speak.
Uh, Probably for me it was like Lido CSM, to be honest, which is probably later than a lot of other people. Um, I also think that um, actually no, before then maybe we got a little bit of an inkling. I think before then that there was. I don't think there was any thought in our head that a tokenomics change would be possible in like I say this in a nice way, but in the political environment that we had, right? There was no. I
That is
don't
the
think that.
beautiful phrasing. I love that.
I don't think that it was even possible to have that discussion. Um, I think we had to get to that. We had to get to a critical point for people to reevaluate and go, okay, let's try something different. Um, and I think Lido CSM was definitely the thing for me because I couldn't see a way. I spent quite a lot of time trying to figure out how to keep the collateral requirement and compete with Lido CSM, and it wouldn't. I just couldn't. I just couldn't do it. It was. I
The
couldn't
model
figure out
doesn't
a way.
exist.
Yeah, every single time I do it, like okay, so the Houston stuff. That sorry, I say the Houston stuff kind of worked. Um, in when I say I mean Houston stuff, I mean separating the RPL and ETH holders and all that sort of stuff. I think that kind of works, but it doesn't. I just think that Lido CSM had potentially had way less friction, and that was going to be a major. And I'm kind of like a product guy. I like building products, and I just saw that as being something that would really hurt us. So and every time I try to figure out a way of keeping collateral, even the separation and all that sort of stuff, it just felt like a square peg round hole. It meant we were making trade-offs that we were worse. But the only thing is we had to do it in a way that maintained RPL kind of like value. RPL's market cap is what, 230 million, and I really, we need to have some need to have something convincing we need to have something convincing to move ahead with. It can't be. It has to be very well considered, and I think where we've got to, I think, is that. I think the reworked tokenomic stuff that's been developed does give us a really strong fundamental for that.
There's a popular meme going around right now that goes, "What we can be, unburdened by what has been." And as memey as it is, I think it is fitting as a descriptor of sort of the period post incubator where we sort of like said, "All right, everything is on the table. What can we think of?" And I think the four RPIPs that came out of that were a balance of what is possible given the technical constraints of a late Pectra, essentially, mega Pectra, of the CSM going live when it's going to be, the limits of mega pools without forced exits, uh, and the general schema of new value capture. With that said, we have the RPIP 39, 49, which is actually composed of a variety of sub RPIPs. Some of these RPIPs are widely widely supported uncontroversially, such as bonding curves. Actually, I take that back. Bonding curves does have some debate, and I remember we covered it a little while ago, related to centralization concerns. However, it is now part of this omnibus alongside megapools, though the integrating execution layer triggable exits, so on and so forth, which an interesting one being the universal adjustable revenue split, which has over time generated some controversy. Despite the overall vote being 99.5% in favor, I think there still remains some controversy around this sub point. So, do you want to take us through your personal opinion on the potential risks of having the protocol in charge of being able to update every single dial of rETH and RPL value flow?
I think in general, the having when you say the protocol, you mean governance. So
Yes.
yeah. Um, I don't necessarily think. I think that the being in control of those dials is actually important for the protocol. So for governance to have control over those dials, essentially. I guess where I differ from some some other people as well is that one of the things that I'm worried about is so other people are worried about supply and demand and making sure that we have like a market driven commission kind of value, and although I agree with that I agree over like quite long timelines rather than short timelines. I think short timelines are problematic because if you evaluate those demand the demand in a short cycle, you can overreact. And there's a massive, what we've kind of like seen is like this massive lag between changing stuff and getting demand anyway. And also I'm kind of the opinion that it's mostly driven from competitive comparison rather than demand, rather than short-term demand cycles. So there's a whole heap of stuff there. So the only I guess the only worry that I have with governance having control over the commission rates is that we are reactive, and that we overreact to things, and we end up in a situation that we're constantly changing it, and we confuse the market and all of that sort of stuff. They're kind of like the issues that I find with that. But in general, I think the governance having control over the commission rate is good, as long as we don't kind of like overreact and that sort of thing. If we do it on like a long enough time cycle, I think it's good. I think it means we can react competitive, we can react to demand, we can do all of that to make sure that Rocket Pool moves forward really well, and it takes up TVL and makes sure that we're well placed competitively. So that's what I'm kind of seeing anyway.
Yeah, that's a really strong perspective on the situation, and I think it ties into what is Rocket Pool's brand and reputation and really distinguishing feature from the competition, and that's it's the most decentralized in the some vague meaning of that word. And it's a multifaceted word. One of those facets is the reliability of the flows of the assets. And as you say, if it's constantly changing, we might start alienating our core users who are these decentralization maxis. It's something we definitely want to avoid, I think. So it's a good
I
worry
think
to.
also a big thing is, so a lot of people, myself included. Sorry, I'm just laughing at Dr. Doofus. In trading. Anyway, where was I? Oh no, that's right. A lot of so with staking, it's pretty much um a lot of people see it as a set and forget. Okay, so um, there's the least amount of management you can have on it, the better, to a certain degree. I mean, you need to upgrade your node and all of that sort of stuff, and keep things moving along. But we really don't want it to make it. We really don't want to make it overburdensome, and I actually don't see stakers as being like this responding to yield, small yield changes over time. I think really they just want to stake their ETH, and they want to do it really simply. So that's a key thing for me, is making sure that we don't increase the barrier to entry for node operators, and even if that's from like a context perspective, or them getting into it.
Yeah, I think that really tracks. Um, we have a huge variety of users that we have to keep in mind here. So I'm curious, has the overwhelmingly positive response thus far to the RPIPs come as a surprise, or is this somewhat expected given the lengthy back and forth process that we've had?
I think it probably says something about the amount of work that has been put into them, um, not just in the sense that, not just in the drafting of the RPIPs, but also the communication of the RPIPs. All of the authors and other people as well have been constantly communicating this and refining it, and and adjusting as they go. So I think on the original, I think there's like a huge list of kind of actual contributors to the RPIP. So yeah, I there's an awful lot of engagement that's gone around this, and I think that shows from the vote that's been put up and the positive reception.
What do you think is the benefit of having had multiple proposals technically in competition? I'm of course referring to the 1KX and Evans proposals.
Yeah, I think it's great, and I think you have to have that process. If I'm completely honest, if there were no alternate proposals, I'd be a little worried. I think the to be honest, during the whole process, I think there has been alternate there have been counterpoints, and you kind of you see that there have been counterpoints, and then those counterpoints have been kind of like dealt with either through communicating certain things or adjusting the RPIPs, and you've seen that kind of happen. But then having like they're counterpoints. They're not something that you can kind of like hang your hat on. Whereas with the alternate proposals, that gives people a chance to go, no, actually, we really should move in those directions. And so, that does actually give a thing to hang for people to hang their hat on and say, no, actually, we should be going in that direction. So I think those alternate proposals are very important, and they've kind of created a lot of discussion around different points and trade-offs and all this sort of thing and concerns.
Yeah, I think that's very accurate as to why we ended up with the proposals we did. And I think it's telling, or that process is the reason I think, didn't end up with more proposals, because had the communication not been as amazing as it had been, I think people who ended up contributing to the one broad uh, RPIP would have ended up potentially splintering into subgroups, and we would have seen more RPIP individually that would then take a longer overall time to get through. So yeah, I think it's not just another sign of the great communication, surprisingly, that the community managed throughout this process. So I'm curious on your thoughts on a slightly different topic, and that is an idea that has recently been percolating for the past couple of weeks in the Discord, and that is the idea of ETH only mini pools in some capacity, even prior to the Saturn One upgrade. Have you been following this discussion?
Yes, yeah, very closely.
So I, unfortunately, due to the demands of medical school of late, have not even opened the thread, and I believe Halulu uh, has been the progenitor of the idea. So I don't want to make things up about this. Is it possible you can give us a summary of these ideas, how they have evolved, and where we stand on them?
Yeah, I'll do my best. So I also don't want to get it wrong either. But so okay, so the idea is to try to get some of the benefits, but particularly the TVL benefits ahead of Saturn. So obviously Saturn is going to take a little bit of time to develop. So um, one of the options is to try to figure out a way to essentially do non-smart contract make a change that is like a non-smart contract related change. So it could be smart node and that sort of thing to or config changes. So that parameter changes. So those things can be deployed very quickly. they still need obviously a fair amount of rigor around them. They still need testing and all that sort of stuff. But from a developer perspective, they're much easier to implement. So so the idea is to come up with a way of doing that that gives us some of the benefits of Saturn, but without having to go through all of the Saturn stuff. So a couple of the ideas. So it's mainly around using our current LEB8s, but essentially setting the RPL stake requirement to 0. So you'd have ETH only LEB8s, and but you would reduce the commission rate. So you reduce the commission rate to, I'm going to say 7% because that's just the number that's lying around, but I don't know what that number really is. The final number is not really decided, but let's say 7%. And what that means is that new LEB8s would have a commission rate of 7%. But then there are kind of like some, obviously then you still need to have some sort of advantage for staking RPL. And so there's a couple of ways to kind of do that. The main idea that's being worked on at the moment is this thing called dynamic commission, which basically means that the more RPL that you stake, the more your commission increases. So you go from 7% up to a maximum of 14%, which is basically the same as what we've kind of got in the current system, by staking RPL. So what that does is it means that there are kind of other little things around that, and that is adjusting the RPL. So if you'll get RPL rewards, but we're also changing the cliff. So so instead of having like a 10% cutoff, you'll actually have this like cliff, or no, sorry, you'll actually have this curve that kind of comes down instead. So there are kind of like different elements to it as well. I don't think I've explained it. I don't think I've explained it super well, but that's essentially the idea.
Right. So, as I understand it, the goal was some kind of change that's wouldn't require the entire auditing process, or
Yes.
would still, yes. So in that vein, I feel like largely would focus on the RPL stream, and the RPL cliff. Uh, so it's going to be interesting to see how that evolves. Maybe we can get Hululu to hop on a call, our future biweekly. Um, it's still in early discussion phases, so if this is a topic that interests you, I would recommend checking it out in the Discord. Um, the idea of being able to get the benefits of growing the TVL prior to Saturn going live has a variety of optical and practical benefits, insofar as the group of people we're trying to attract with the new features might come earlier, and so having the upgrade with a bit of momentum might just have a snowballing effect. And thinking long term into Saturn 2, the larger the TVL is at the point of Saturn 2, the greater our initial RPL APR will look, which might be good for a variety of reasons. So yeah, any closing thoughts on ETH only pools? Is this something that, with community consensus, could feasibly happen prior to Saturn 1?
Yeah, so as you said, it's still very much in the kind of early discussion phase. There's still a fair amount to shake out. I think it could. From a technical perspective, I'm not seeing any sorry, I am seeing one red flag. There is one red flag, unfortunately, and that is the we call it the scrub penalty, and so that we would have to figure out that. But that is something that could be that is something that could be worked on. So there's a community kind of proposed workaround for that. We also have like a smart contract workaround for that, which you know, although it's a smart contract workaround, it is a much smaller scope than, well, a far smaller scope than Saturn, for example. So it could be delivered quite quickly. But I think we're still and I say this. I think the community are further along than I am, but from myself, I'm really seeing this in the very early conceptual stages rather than further along. But at the same time, it is something that's easier to deliver, and so that will move a lot quicker, and that element of it will move a lot quicker. So yeah, it is something I definitely agree with the goals of the kind of like ETH only thread in terms of trying to get those benefits up front and earlier, but I'm just not quite sure. I just need to make sure that we get there while not, I guess, not making and without making the wrong trade-offs or making trade-offs that could hurt us in the future. So I think that's where I'm at the moment. Like, yeah, there's a lot of discussion going on, and I've got to get back to that thread today. I'll try to get back to that thread today.
Yeah, we could also debate forever on conceptual ideas that aren't written down in their totality. So it'll definitely be something to follow, and hopefully something good comes out of it, as that would be, I think, a great boon to Rocky Pool in the medium term. So on our next topic, I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on the current situation of Rocky Pool hiring and staffing? The token has taken a bit of a beating as part of a wider market downturn, and I'm wondering if that has any impact on the team.
Not necessarily. Well, in the sense that this is why we tend to stay small, because
Right, right.
because these swings are inevitable. It's not yeah, it's inevitable. Like they're no matter you have a bull market, it feels great. It's always going to be here. We're going, everything's going to a new level. But these downturns are inevitable. So that's one reason why we kind of like stay small and don't overcommit. I think I've said this kind of like quite repeatedly, but we're not the usual VC thing where we spend loads of money and then have to let loads of people go when there's a downturn. Those downturns are inevitable, so we might as well because that VC cycle of boom and bust, or at least grow and cut, is just a waste of talent. So we prefer not to do that. So that's why we tend to stay on the smaller side. Obviously, the token price going down does affect our overall ability to, or our our purchasing power. But we keep our expenses low for that, so that we don't have to worry as much.
I'm just thinking back to ETH Denver and how many people were astonished that Rocket Pool was only a team of 8 at the time. And in moments like this, you sort of really appreciate that fact that Rocket Pool hasn't, to my knowledge, ever had to fire anyone. That it seems like the people that work here are here for the long haul, and it's quite intimate in that fact. So yeah, glad to hear that the team is trucking along. This is just another cycle. I mean, with an ICO in 2016, you and Dave have seen it all.
Yeah, I mean,
So, yep.
we got kind of quite numb to to the
Yeah.
cycle. Yeah.
Uh, So I'm told the team had a workshop this morning where they talked about Houston and Saturn. Uh, any interesting tidbits from this meeting?
Literally just finished that meeting. When did you hear about that?
I have my
um,
sources.
oh, there you go. Wow, that's pretty quick. So I think with the we've been kind of like steadily breaking down. Okay, so with the vote kind of going the way that it's going, it's pretty obvious. We've already kind of started. We were already starting to work on Saturn, but on like the parts that were less kind of like controversial. So we'd already kind of like started some of that stuff, but we are now going obviously a bit harder on that now. And so this morning was so we're basically figuring out how we're breaking up the work and what we're delivering, what kind of like the delivery order should be. I think we're focusing on deposit kind of at the moment. Well, actually, there's a little bit of infrastructure that we need to build out. So we're building those like key elements. One of them is the kind of like the verifier. It's the proof verifier, which is using 4788. So the beacon state root. Um, so writing like this verifier that will enable us to do a whole heap of cool stuff and be hooked into different parts of the system going forward. So Kane is working on that at the moment, and Fornax is working on essentially like the new deposit mechanics. So there's a bit of infrastructure that we need around that because we need a new queue type, like a new queue structure. So he's been working on that. And this morning it was breaking down some of the deposit mechanism and trying to figure out which there's kind of like a different ways that we could go. It's a bit difficult to explain technically, but there's a couple of ways that we could go. So we were having a bit of a design meeting this morning to figure out which way would be the best way to go. So that's good. So we're breaking that down, and so we're going to concentrate primarily at the moment on deposit. So depositing into megapools, and then the idea there is to try to get kind of like a DevNet up with that element in place quite quickly. We still need to kind of like work this through because I need to have a vision of how that DevNet would evolve and that sort of thing. But that would be the idea. So we're kind of like focusing on each element of the node operator lifecycle. And that first step is obviously deposit. You can't really do anything without deposit. So we're starting there and we'll work through that.
Question. Have we landed anywhere on how the actual structure of a megapool will look? I know there's been some back and forth on will it be a single large validator up to 2048 and other iterations. So I'm curious where that stands.
I think we're mainly working on the premise that there'll be multiple validators. Although that is something that is a design decision that we can defer a little bit longer. But I think we're mainly working off the premise that it's going to be multiple validators.
Got it. So multiple independent validators. Will that be managed by a sort of a manager address, sort of like originally envisioned by Kane?
Yes. So basically, originally how we originally looked at it. So there'd be one megapool address, which will be the withdrawal credential, and then the megapool itself will store kind of information on the individual validators.
Got it. And that'll still be sort of unbounded. So that will be unbounded in terms of validators per one megapool instead of the limit of
Yeah,
like
that's it.
2048.
Yeah, that's it. So effectively, you'll have one megapool per node.
I think for our larger whales, they'll be pretty appreciative of that. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plans out. So that's especially important given that Saturn 1, in theory, would be live pre-Pectra. And so we wouldn't even have the ability to do a 2048 pool.
Yeah, and that's the kind of like the benefit of doing that approach as well, is that we're not tied to Pectra, so we can kind of not worry about that release and release when we're ready to.
Sweet. Have you given any other thoughts towards breakdown of the Saturn upgrade, or are you just mainly focused on the deposit mechanism for the time being?
So from a development perspective, we're mainly focusing on deposit mechanism, or that kind of part of the life cycle. In terms of my time, I'm obviously spending quite a bit of time talking about the ETH only stuff, and where we're going with that. Yeah, I think that's basically, yeah. There's a lot of discussion, but yeah.
Has there been discussion on sourcing our ETH demand post Saturn?
Not yet. I think that's a interesting. I think that's something that should be discussed. But I haven't seen anything myself.
Right. I think there are some avenues that have yet to be explored by the protocol DAO, such as referrals and better wallet integrations, where we can advertise the fact that our pool is open and not perpetually, sitting at a premium. Those are things that we can emphasize after we have Saturn One live and our scaling potential goes through the roof. Uh, but we have to be ready for that and take advantage of that. Otherwise, our growth could stall from lack of demand on the opposite side. So yeah, I'm curious if the team has any future discussions on that. We'll look forward to that.
Yeah, I mean,
So there
most
was.
of our
Mhm.
most of the issues that we faced up until this point is that most of those integrations, or at least some of the discussions that we've had have pretty much always hit a bit of a brick wall because the deposit pool's full. That's always been the kind of like issue. And so by making the deposit pool less, well, empty, um, those problems go away, and so integrations become a much easier conversation. Um, and so yeah, that's automatically going to be a better scenario. Then then you've kind of like mentioned referral programs and that sort of thing. I think you have to be not careful, but I think there's definitely uh, need to figure out how to structure that sort of program. But for key kind of like integrations and that sort of thing, I think it would be a good idea.
Yeah, I think a brief referral period into like a new wallet ecosystem would kickstart some growth there and adoption that could then snowball into further adoption. So being very targeted and very careful with the structuring of it would be the key to a successful program there. But this is stuff that the PDAO and the IMC will are not. I don't think that actually is under the IMC's remit. No, that is not. That would have to come from the PDAO. The IMC is bound not to spend incentives for purely TVL growth, and this would be very tenuous on that principle. But the PDAO is more than welcome to spend inflation however it pleases, uh, or the IMC could be granted the power to handle such programs by the PDAO. It could be a new delegated authority. So, in other news, um, there was some conversation stoked in the community about a big stake that happened and a bunch of validators that went live under the ENS consensus mesh. Do you have any public knowledge about this organization?
No.
Oh, that's unfortunate. Okay.
uh, no, not directly. So we know. Okay, so I can say that the consensus have definitely been interested in staking with us for a while, but yeah, I'm not. I can't really. Yeah, say much more.
Fair enough. Yep. We'll just move on to the next question then. So there has been some chit chat from the Blockstr community or team about different products that they've wanted to offer to Rocket Pool. At ETH Denver, they had been talking a lot about the validator gateway, sort of to improve latency and income for validators that use their product, but also paying a small fee. Um, have y'all talked about this Blockstr product at all?
Yeah, I mean they've reached out to us, and we've kind of like talked to them vaguely about it. I think the thing with a lot of these kind of approaches that we get, often we have to like examine, where the best, where it's best served, and most of the time it is post something on the DAO forum, because for us, it's not. We can definitely advise from an approach perspective. We are generally the doormen of the DAO. They come to us, and then we say, okay, yeah, you need to speak to the IMC, or you need to speak to the GMC, or if it's something like this, for example, then you need to post on the DAO forum so that the community know about it, and they can have some opinion about it, and you can gauge kind of interest, or everyone can gauge interest on it. So that's generally what's happening with a lot of the approaches that we get, and this is kind of like no different. If there's impetus from the community around it, then it's much easier for stuff to happen.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute there. I was saying, in a similar vein to the proposal that Bloxroute provides, I think they have posted to the governance forum now, by the way. There's another one that was posted on the forum a few days ago by Enzyme. Enzyme is sort of like an entity that facilitates operations on behalf of DAOs. For example, I believe they were in charge of the Diva airdrop and the different ways you could earn the Diva token. Um, they build these sort of structured products, and they have offered to build a RPL buyback, potentially buyback and burn, or RPL buy and LP for the protocol in their sort of system that would, in theory, require less auditing and actual building to get live. So I'm glad they posted it because it's interesting and useful for the community to have this on the options map. It would be a faster option to get towards a sort of value capture mechanism. However, it comes with its own set of trade-offs, being that I believe there would be a fee paid to Enzyme. It would be a temporary solution that still requires us to, take it over at some point. And it would also add its own set of risks as we are adopting some set of new smart contract. However, I'm very glad to see protocols or groups from the ecosystem reach out and engage with Rocket Pool. So I would encourage you to share your opinion about the idea. It would be cool in theory to have RPL buy and LP live in the order of months rather than having to wait for the cycle of Saturn II. Any thoughts on that?
I haven't actually kind of like digested the proposal, so I can't really comment on it too much.
Oh, that's quite all right. Yeah, I would encourage people to go read it. They have written a bit about what they would offer, not in exact technical details that we might expect in the trading channel. But that could surely be elucidated with some feedback if the community is interested in this type of uh, way to get to the yield opportunities. So that brings me to just about the end of my list of questions for today. Um, do you have any final comments on, how Rocket Pool has gotten to this point with the tokenomics rework, or about anything related to Houston Saturn generally?
Yeah, I mean, probably the only other thing is I'm working on a dev update anyway, but I'll include this in there. But one of the other things we're working on is this kind of like Houston hotfix, which is pretty much done, and we're almost ready to send that over to the auditors. So that's kind of like the next thing that's in place. So the Houston hotfix fixes the issue with 16 ETH mini pools and kind of like exiting without initializing their voting power. It has a couple of like little non-functional tweaks in there. It has a couple of bug bounty tweaks in there. Probably probably the most important thing is, so in terms of the new governance system, so Snapshot is using the new governance system under the hood, so that's great. So that's all working well, as we've kind of like seeing now. That's good. The on-chain system hasn't been turned on just yet. Unfortunately, we have to wait for this hotfix to be deployed before we can turn it on. But the initialized vote power is going the right way, which is awesome to see. And once we've released the hotfix, we can turn on the PDAL voting essentially. So that's probably the only other thing to kind of mention.
A quick question: thoughts on the level of voter initialization and level of quorum we have relative to what we sort of wanted originally?
Yeah, I think I haven't checked it today. I think we're over 40%, like 45% of the vote is initialized. I think we've decided to keep the quorum as total rather than initialized, basically to make sure that the quorum is high enough that it's basically that to make sure that the quorum is high enough that we get what's the best way of putting it, but a convincing quorum essentially. So we've kind of like kept it at was it 15% of total rather than on initialized. So that's what we're kind of going with going forward. But yeah, no, I think it's good. We've got a couple of little things like we may well have a smart node release that coming out soon that will auto initialize people. So you can actually turn this off, but it'll probably come out so that it'll auto initialize people. This is to make sure that the initialized number and the total number are as close as possible. But I think in terms of the number of people who have initialized, I think we've probably got a good amount of people that's probably representative of the number of people that actually vote. But for a technical reason, I think we need this kind of auto initialize thing. But no, I think it's good. It's definitely going in the right way. We've got quite a lot of people initialized now, and obviously the vote on Snapshot has been quite successful from that perspective. So yeah, no, I think it's good. I think we should be able to bid this down quite quickly.
Yeah, I think we've hit a pretty healthy quorum, and the delegate page is pretty well balanced. Mav, do you have any updates for us on upcoming events or things to look forward to?
I have a couple on future community calls. So we have one with Karpatki talking about rETH on Gnosis chain coming up next week. That is already listed as an event in Discord. and then the following week we'll likely get Blocks right on to discuss this new relay option that you guys were talking about earlier. So apart from them, we are getting towards the end of finalizing sponsorship and travel stuff for DevCon in Bangkok. So make sure you join us there. If you're still on the fence, there's still time to book. It'd be great to see everyone in Thailand for a week or so. I think that's all I've got.
Alrighty, definitely recommend coming out for the Gnosis chat next week. Rocket Pool has had a pretty storied relationship with Karapaki, up and down, but for the up overall, I think. And expanding to the Gnosis ecosystem is great. They're doing some really incredible stuff there, especially with the cheddarized beacon chain. Wish I could make it, but I will probably be in class. With that said, I thank everyone for being here for another bi-weekly community call. We covered a lot of stuff today, starting off with the good folks from iYield and their sort of financial planning app that incorporates Rocket Pool mini pools. With Langers, we talked about the 4 RPIPs that are now live for voting with overwhelmingly positive reception. Talked a little bit about the history of, how we got to this point, how the team got to this point internally as well. We then talked about the percolating discussions around ETH-only mini pools and how we might be able to get them prior to Saturn 1, depending on the actual spec that is presented. This is still in discussion mode. We talked a little about how the team is doing with hiring and staffing, and then moved on to how Houston and Saturn are starting to become more itemized and focused, or broken into pieces that can actually be iterated upon, starting with the deposit function. The team also is working on Langers, you mentioned the hotfix, and a potential new smart node patch in the upcoming future to handle things like potential auto initialization. We mentioned Blockshroud's proposal on a validator gateway relay, as well as Enzyme's proposal on a RPL buy and burn. I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope you join us for the next one. Take care, everyone, and have a good night.
Thank you, everybody. Cheers, Jasper. Great speaking to you.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys.